come in from our global family, and then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here may have. Is stealing to feed a starving child wrong? So we've got levels of ethics, we'll call it. Is it wrong according to our laws? Yes. If you steal something, even if you have reason, most countries have laws that will punish you for that. But the question here is more of a moral question. And to me it goes a lot deeper than things that we do that are justified. You think, for example, is sticking a knife into someone's chest bad or good? Well, most of us immediately would say bad, that's horrible, it's murder, it's stabbing someone. But if you're a doctor, then it's good. Then you're doing surgery. You're saving them. So it's not so much the act itself as what the motivation and intention behind it is. That which we own, or I should put own in quotation marks, that which we own, on a deep spiritual level, we're simply trustees of it anyway. None of us really owns anything. We're just trustees of it. And we're trustees who are supposed to be responsible with it. And so if a child is starving, and there's an abundance of bread somewhere, and you don't have the money to buy that bread, you are also starving and impoverished, and you stole a piece of bread or a loaf of bread, I don't know by any moral standard that would be seen as wrong. I don't know anyone who would fault you on a moral, ethical, spiritual level. Now, obviously, if you could afford to buy the food for the child, you should do that. But I think about it on a much deeper level, which is the society that we have created in which there are people who are starving. Because the theft from that child begins much more deeply than the theft for that child. So the question is about stealing for the child. I've stolen bread or fruit or whatever it may be from someone else, from a market, from a shop, from a teliwala, whatever it may be, to give to a child who is starving. But before we stole for the child, we have stolen from the child, because there is no reason for that child to be starving. We actually produce enough food to feed everyone on earth, easily. The United States alone produces, and this was years ago, enough grain to feed 10 billion people a day. If no other country produced anything, we could still feed the world and have a lot left over. So our systems of society are stealing from people. That has created situations in which we find ourselves stealing for them, or asking questions about stealing for them. And so I think it's important for us to realize that values and ethics and morals, they're not frozen in time. Things vary. I mean, is lying wrong? Yeah. In the abstract, of course it is. And yet, we have situations, you read the Mahabharata, there are situations where, even under the instruction of God, lies are told. But they're told in favor of Dharma, in service of Dharma. Violence is done in service of Dharma. Is violence wrong? Yes. Is killing wrong? Yes. And here we are in situations where it's warranted. These are the beautifully interesting and deep questions that we ask in discussions around morals and values and ethics and decision making. When is it right to tell a lie, kill, steal? But those discussions are theoretical, and they're certainly interesting philosophically. There's lots of books written on these topics philosophically, courses you can take in universities on them philosophically. But that doesn't change us. What matters for us is, how are we contributing to a society in which we are stealing already from people? In which we are being complicit in a system that even allows there to be children who are starving. And that, for me, is the much deeper and more interesting question. Because that's the question we can actually do something about. And so if you're worried about starving children, instead of stealing for them, or in addition to stealing for them, if that's what you've got to do to feed one, there's a lot more that we can do. We can change our system of eating. We can go vegetarian, free up 15 times as much grain. Turning grain into meat takes 16 times as much grain as eating the grain as bread or pasta or rice. We can structure societies in ways where we're paying more into the general pot so that more can have help. Nobody wants taxes to be raised, of course, and yet without taxes there's no medical care for the poor, there's no education for the poor. There's nothing to help them. And so instead of cheating on our taxes or figuring out, how we can hire a good accountant to save as much as we possibly can and not have to give, we give with the understanding that this is our part of being a responsible member of a society. That hospitals and schools, they don't come out of thin air. And if the government is going to run them, the government needs money to do so. Otherwise, they're horrible quality, like we see too frequently. And so we play our part, recognizing that each of us has a role to play in the equality or the lack of equality in our societies. International Human Rights Day is coming up in a few days. The day a year that's really dedicated to human rights. You think, well, isn't it a human right to be able to eat? Isn't it a human right to be able to get at least primary medical care? Shouldn't these be really inviolable rights? That as long as there is enough food, everyone should eat? If I said, all right, so we're having dinner, and there's 10 of us at the table, and whoever's cooking brings out a plate of chapatis. One person at that table of 10 takes the entire plate of chapatis. Well, everyone would say, "Hum to galat hai. Nahi kaadna chahiye." Everybody should share. And yet that's exactly what we do in our societies. We call it success. The guy who grabs the plate of 10 of all the chapatis, leaving everyone else to starve, we call that guy the successful one. And everyone wants to be like him or her. And so this is where it's so essential that our whole vision of success changes. It's not about what you can grab and accumulate and hoard. It's about what you can share and do. So those are going to have much more long-reaching impacts on hunger. If in order to feed a starving child today, you need to steal food for them because you have no money and you have no food, well, I don't think there's anything morally wrong with that. But what I would say is, in addition to that, let us all work on a deep and systemic level to change our version of success, our definition of success, change how we live in society so that children aren't starving, so that the question doesn't even need to be asked. Because we provide for all, like in a family, no one steals all the chapatis. So before taking any of the other questions that have come in advance from our family joining us online, if anyone here has any questions, I would be happy to answer them. Yes.
Nowadays, in the modern city, mostly people doing job and have a problems. So me every day in the evening thinking a lot of about the tomorrow. Sometimes it's must more than enough. I disturbing in the sleeping. So is it okay or is it not okay? Then why? Or what is the solution for that? How to control the mind?
So, yes, so many people are filled with thinking about their problems. But what you think about is up to you. Learning to control the mind is a practice. It's just like learning to control the body. If you say, I want to learn to play piano, or I want to learn how to play violin, or bansuri, or I want to learn how to play basketball, you're going to have to practice. Maybe you'll take a class, maybe you'll teach yourself, but you're going to practice. Teach the hands how to play the piano. Teach the legs how to run. Teach the hands how to dribble the ball. You wouldn't expect कि आज आप कहते हैं कि मुझे बांसुरी play karna, and that tomorrow suddenly you'd be able to do it. Or today you decide, I want to play the piano. Or sham tak you are an expert. We understand it takes practice. But it's so interesting with our mind because we seem to assume either that we should be able to control it automatically, and if we can't, well, it must just be a problem with the mind and we just have to learn to live with it. And it's tragic because the mind is the steering wheel. If I was going to sell you a car, and I said, it's a beautiful car, itna sundar gadi, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 2 seconds. Beautiful car. बस एक ही बात है, स्टीयरिंग व्हील नहीं है. Would you buy it? Would anybody buy the car without a steering wheel? Of course not, because no matter how beautiful it is, obviously I want to control where it's going. Otherwise it's going to crash, it's going to hurt me, blow up. The mind is the steering wheel of our life. And yet, so many of us just allow ourselves to be like, yeah, my mind, I can't control it, what do you do? And we just move on. I always think about it like if I were talking to you and suddenly my arms started going like this. And I said, oh, don't worry about it. Those are just my silly arms. They have a mind of their own. They do whatever they want. You would think, this woman needs help. Something's wrong. We understand that our arms should not just flail around like that. That I should be able to control them. And if I can't control them, there's a problem. Not just a theoretical problem, but a problem that actually I should get some help for. Right? अगर आप मेरे दोस्त होते and my arms keep going like that, you would say, अरे यार जरा डॉक्टर के पास जाओ. Good problem है. Right? Because we understand I should be able to control my arms. But our mind, we say, yeah, वो तो मन तो है ऐसा. My mind is just like that. It's negative, it's full of ego, it's full of anger, it's full of desires. मैं करूँ क्या? What do I do? And we give up so easily. Like I just decided that, yeah, for the rest of my life, my arms are just going to do this and I have no control. But the mind has to be worked with. The same way that we learn to work with the body when a child learns to walk. They don't stand up for the first time and dance or run down the house. They stand up, they wobble a little bit, they fall down. They stand up, they wobble a little bit, they fall down. And slowly, slowly, slowly their legs learn how to hold them. Slowly, slowly, slowly. The mind needs to be trained. That's all it is. Think of it as a muscle. It just needs to be trained. And it is a muscle in many ways, not biologically, but in the same way that if I lift weights every day, if every day I take weights and I do this, eventually my bicep muscle is actually going to change. It's going to start to grow. In the same way, whatever I do causes my brain to change. The more I do something, the more my brain changes. So when I work with my mind, my brain will change and it will become easier to work with my mind. But you have to start working at it. That's why whether it's music teachers, whether it's sports coaches, they're always very strict, right? Have you ever seen a sports coach who's like, yeah, go out there, do your best, you win, great, you lose, no problem. Try to kick the ball if you can. No. What are sports coaches like? Go, 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 now, run, right? They yell. They're sweating, they're coming out of their clothes. You see these guys on the field in the middle of a sports game, they're screaming their heads off to get the players to do what they need to do to win the game. They're not saying, "Hare, jaise theek samjhe waise kar do." You feel like hitting the ball, great. You feel like having a cup of chai, no problem. Haan, chai piyo, koi baat nahi. They're not going to tolerate that. They're going to go out there, they're going to grab the guy. Kar kya rahe ho? Ye chai peene ka time nahi hai. Right? So, in the same way, We have to be strict with our minds. Not mean, but just disciplined. Think about it like you are the coach on a sporting team. When your mind starts to wander in the direction of your problems, don't be like the guy who's like, theek hai yaar, udhar jaoge, theek hai, no problem. Be like that sports coach. Bring that mind back in line. Be disciplined. Takes practice, but everything takes practice. So every time your mind starts going to the problems, and by the way, a large percentage of the problems are not even problems yet. They're problems we think we will have tomorrow. Agar ye hoga to fir kya hoga? Ye nahi hoga to, oh my God, kya hoga? So we're actually disturbed not just by problems we have, but we're disturbed by problems we don't even have yet. You're losing your sleep today, creating problems today, based on a problem that you don't even have. Is that an intelligent way to live? Right? You're giving yourself a very real problem today. You cannot sleep. Why? Because the mind can't stop thinking about a problem that you don't have. That you might have in the future, but you're certainly more likely to have problems if you don't sleep at night. Because then you can't think clearly. Then you make mistakes. So you're giving yourself a very real problem in the present based on a problem you may not even have in the future. And this really is just where practice and discipline comes in. It's why we meditate. It's why we chant mantra. It's why we work with the mind. You just work with it like a sports coach works with the team. When it wanders off, bring it back. It wanders off, bring it back. Wanders off, bring it back. Develop a ritual before you go to sleep. Sit in puja, in prayer, and offer it all to God. Okay, God, here are my real problems. Here are my made-up problems. Give them all, no problem. Here are the problems I'm creating for myself based on my made-up problems. Just give it all to God. Truly surrender it. You could put a little bowl in the mandir in your house. Usually we put, an oil lamp, agarbatti. But put a little bowl. And every day, before you sleep, put all of your problems into that bowl. And then you leave that bowl in front of God. And you go to sleep. And as you go to sleep, very much like meditation, be aware of the breath. Just watch the breath. Watch yourself breathe. Slow it down as much as you can. And slowly you'll fall asleep. And if the mind wanders, just bring it back. It wanders, bring it back. Okay? But you've got to practice it all day, not only in the night. If you practice it in the day, then you will be able to do it in the night. Okay? Good. Does anyone else have a question here? Okay. Well, then I'll take one more from our global family. Which is worse, failing or never trying? Well, it depends what it is. I don't think you can make a blanket statement on that. I'm certainly all about courage and taking risks that are in alignment with your dharma and your path. I'm all about breaking the mold, thinking outside the box, charting your own path. And yet, that's all when it's really in alignment with your dharma, with how you're supposed to live. It's not about risks just for risks. It's not about, going off the path just for the sake of going off the path. And so in terms of failing or never trying, it depends what it is. For example, I don't know anything about the stock market. Nothing. Now, if you handed me, let's say someone handed me 1,00,000 of rupees, okay? Now, as a sannyasi, I wouldn't take it for myself, but let's say that you handed me 1,00,000 of rupees and you said, just watch this for me. Okay? I'm putting this in your hands. Should I try to invest them in stocks? Lose somebody's money? That wouldn't be, in my opinion, that would not be a smart decision. Unless I got a lot of really good advice from people who did know something about stocks. But for me to take the risk, whether it's my money or someone else's money, in playing the stock market when I know nothing about it, and I might as well go to Las Vegas and take the money and stick it on, the roulette wheel. Not a good decision. I would much rather never try the stock market than fail at it. I would much rather never try gambling than fail at gambling. I would much rather never try flying by jumping off of a rooftop than trying and failing and going splat on the ground. So life is not about how many risks can you take. But it's also about having the courage to take those that you know you need to take, because if you don't take them, you won't be living your best, deepest, fullest life. So those are the risks we take. Those are the things that we say, all right, I'm going to try this, even if I'm going to fail. And even aside from that, in areas of creativity, for example, whether creativity actually in terms of music or art, or creativity in the workplace. Obviously in companies, whatever people do, commercial companies, NGOs, ashrams, ultimately the goal is that everyone who serves there should be creative. You don't want robots. You want people who are creative, which means that we need to create an environment for people to be able to take risks, to be able to try out new ideas, knowing that sometimes it's going to fail. Because otherwise you never go anywhere. And if you look at some of the most successful companies in the world, they're actually all about encouraging their employees to be creative, to take risks for the benefit of the company. Now, I would say for the benefit of the person. If you've got an idea, again, you're going to write a poem, you're going to write a book, you're going to write a song, you're going to make a sculpture, or you've got an idea in your company, or you want to start a company, whatever it may be. Take the risk. Be creative. On those levels, I would absolutely say always take the risk. But just take it smartly. So if you don't know anything about business, for example, and you've got an idea, wonderful, go with it. But don't use every single penny you have and every penny everybody you know has in a brand new idea when you've never done anything financial before, you've never done anything in business. That might be too big of a risk. So figure out a way. Figure out a way to live with courage. With absolute courage to be who you are, to express who you are in the fullest way. But that isn't reckless. Courageous shouldn't mean reckless. So if you can find that balance, take risks that are courageous and that mean something to you, but not risks that are reckless just for the sake of taking a risk. We're here to experience the truth of who we are. And for a lot of that, there's courage that's needed. Because the world is trying to tell us we're someone else. The world, in many cases, is trying to keep us in boxes. Keep us in line. And so we need to take risks and have courage to break out of that. But the goal of life is not about how many airplanes you can jump out of, or how many startups you can start, and how many times you can lose your money over and over again. It's about the expression of the self, of the truest, fullest, deepest self, highest self, which is creative in so many ways. But it's also intelligent. So try not to have blanket decisions of either I'm going to never try or always risk. Ask yourself each time, is this just thrill factor? Is this my own personal reality show? Where I'm performing risk-taking? Don't. You're not on earth to perform or to have your own reality show. We're here to actually understand the true reality of who we are as divine, as spirit, as soul, as one with each other, as one with God. Don't get distracted. Beautiful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. Yeah, did you have... Yes, okay. We'll take this last. Okay, we'll take it last.
How can we realize Atma in the life? And what are your experiences and your advice?
How do we experience Atma? Well, Atma is who we are. The soul is who we are. It's our ignorance and illusion that keeps us from recognizing it. And so the way to experience it is to peel back as much ignorance as you can. That's where that beautiful meditation practice of neti neti comes in, right? I'm not my sari. I'm not my skin beneath the sari. I'm not the blood in my veins. I'm not the veins. I'm not my organs. I'm not my bones. I'm not my muscles. And we go one by one by one, removing the things that we know we are not. It then gets more subtle. I'm not my thoughts. Well, a lot of us think we are our thoughts. I am angry. I am depressed. No. Your thoughts are just chemical and electrical patterns of energy in the gray and white matter of your brain, literally. That's all they are. You're not the chemicals, right? Can't say, I am serotonin. I am norepinephrine. I am dopamine. Of course not. I am the electrical current running down the axon. No. Well, so if you're not the chemicals and you're not the electricity, then you're not the thoughts or the emotions, because that's what they all are. And slowly, slowly we peel back these layers. I'm not my identity. I wear all of these false identities throughout my life. Think back to when you were young, sort of the identity you had in school, the drama you put on. We all do. Then you get older and we start wearing different identities, different costumes, different masks, different roles. But ultimately you aren't any of those. Because if all of your relationships disappeared, if your job disappeared, if all of that disappeared, you'd still be here. So you're not the CEO or president or secretary. You're not the husband or father or son. Because if all of that disappeared, you'd still be here. So we remove all of that which we are not. And when there's nothing left to remove, you find yourself sitting in this very beautiful space of stillness, which if you can hold it long enough, a beautiful experience of who you are will emerge. Not like a woman out of a cake, as a, here is who you are. It's not like that. It's just an experience, an awareness. And it's very sweet. And it's very infinite. And it's very, very still and very spacious. And it just keeps expanding. The longer you sit there, the deeper you go, the more it expands. And it's a beautiful practice to do. It's when you sit, just go in with what you're not, and then allow yourself to sit there. Sometimes you can do it the other way. Sometimes you can go in and simply ask in your meditation, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And allow the answer to emerge. The first things that'll emerge are the stories that you know aren't true. But keep asking it. Make it go deeper. And you'll have the experience. Because the soul, the Atma, is in you. It's not like outer space that we need a spaceship or a telescope. It's inner space. We just need to stop and to look and to see.